I am so delighted to be speaking today with some of the awe-inspiring team behind the extraordinary duo that is Sofi Tukker. So, Sofi, Justina, Logan, it's such a pleasure to speak with you. And thanks again for taking the time to have this conversation with us at Music Cares today. So, we're really talking today about resilience and specifically what it means to be resilient on the road as a music professional. And a few months ago, the Music Cares team and I had the chance to connect with some of you. And we were so impressed and so inspired by the way that you as a team really prioritized wellness. And it just struck us at Music Cares that you seem to have landed upon a formula and an approach that really works and we think will really resonate with so many music professionals. So, with that, I would love to just open it up and learn a little bit from you as a management team and Sofi as an artist and a performer. What does wellness really mean to all of you and to your team?
Well, thank you for having us. I mean, as you probably know, this is a enormous passion of mine, and so it's a no-brainer to have this conversation. It's important to me, and I have seen so many artists, friends, people who I work with and who I know even tangentially just deeply struggle with life on the road. And I've watched every music documentary ever, which all has the same freaking story and the same ending. And I've, watched every single one of them just being like, how do I make sure that that doesn't happen to me? So, these are things that we're like constantly talking about and nerding out about. And just really happy that there are other people who care about it and care about the human beings who are behind the music. Um, but in terms of like what wellness means to me, I guess that's what we're probably going to spend the entire time talking about. I don't know that even as a term, it like fully encapsulates uh, everything because I think wellness is also like associated now with a lot of branding and like an industry. And I think it's just a lot bigger than that. So I almost wish there was a better word too than wellness. It's like health, but like also like that doesn't fully capture spiritual health. Um, so I don't know. I I should we workshop a better word?
I also think that the idea of wellness, um, it's so subjective and personal, and I think it's constantly evolving and changing. So it's not something static or absolute, and I think that um, is part of why it's so important to be doing regular check-ins with yourself about how wellness relates to your life or maybe doesn't, and also with your team members, because the support that someone needs one day may be very different from what they need next week. And I think that's what's so cool about having these dialogues about this, because we have so much to learn from one another.
Yeah, and I can echo both of what Justina and Sophie said. I think in like this ever-changing climate, especially with technology the way it is, we're constantly having to readdress what wellness means and the best ways to serve it and ourselves. So
I think it's such a great point. And I love the idea, Sofi, of like, let's come up with a better term around this because it has in some ways become something of like another corporate industry type term. And it does mean so many different things. There are so many different layers to it. And I think around your point, Justina, it just means something so different to all of us. One question I have, we were so struck in the conversation that we had with all of you about how it felt like whatever this term is that we want to use for this concept of taking care of ourselves in a holistic way and those around us. Has this always been a focus for your team and Sofi for you as a performer, or was there an evolution in terms of how you came to be in this place?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was thinking about the term, and I almost think that a more comprehensive term for me would be fulfillment, because I think it encapsulates like the mental, emotional, spiritual sort of components of all of this. But um, luckily, I made some mistakes early in my life and learned from them. And so, like, went pretty hard in high school and early in college, and I ended up getting super, super into yoga in during college, like at the very end of college. And so, actually, way before I was a performer, way before I was a musician, I was really passionate about taking care of myself, because I had seen the dark side, I would say. I've seen what I look like when I don't take care of myself, and I've seen what people really close to me look like um, when they don't take care of themselves. And it was so petrifying and traumatizing, really, for me, that I just sort of kickstarted a very strong passion in like, what are the things that I can do to make sure that I don't ever go to this dark place again? And for me, it was, it started with yoga, which is all about sort of becoming conscious, becoming embodied, feeling through things with your body, understanding like what your body is trying to tell you in terms of your emotions and trauma that's stored in the body. And then it's like, then that led me to becoming sober, because the more like yoga I did and the more I was interested in that path, the more I felt like drinking and doing other drugs was like actively working against all of the hard work that I was doing. So I became sober when I was 21, and I became an artist when I was like 23. And that I think has really helped me, is that like I've been interested in taking care of myself, and not going down a dark path that I've seen pretty close hand up front, even before touring was a part of my life.
And from the management perspective, really central to my ethos of how I approach the work is longevity. And to me, it's a marathon and not a sprint. And but in particular, I feel like especially started prioritizing this idea of wellness and fulfillment when I started working with Sofi and Tukker, because they both approach what they do in their music careers with the mindset of an athlete. I think a lot of that stems from Tucker's background as a basketball player. And as someone who played a lot of organized sports growing up, I mean, that team mentality of both pushing ourselves to be the best we can, but at the same time, like being there, to lift someone up so that they don't stumble or fall. It's just so important, that like harmony and balance that you can find in a team dynamic. And that's really, solidified the importance of this, really in all of the work that we do.
Yeah, and I agree with both what Justine and Sophie said. I think something really just special about working with Sof and Tuck is just this approach to balance, and just this company in general. I think we have like a really hardworking team that's not afraid to go above and beyond, but is also willing to like known to take a step back and have like a really great like work-life balance, which I think in music in general and like living in New York or in a fast-paced setting like on the road is extremely hard to come by. And I think it's something that we definitely all cherish and are constantly inspired by one another.
I love that. And I think, Logan, that sense comes across. And I think, Sofi, you also touched on this idea of you could see in yourself when the health wasn't there, when the fulfillment wasn't there, and you could also see that in others. And it feels like that's very much a theme and an approach that comes across in your team. So I have to ask, guys, you have an extraordinary touring schedule. You were just at Coachella, you were at Red Rocks before that, you were in Brazil before that. You are going all over the world in the coming months. So how do you guys maintain this when you're out of your home structure, you're out of your kind of norm routine? What are some of the tips or tricks that you might have?
Okay, how much time do you have? The first thing is, we were just on a management call right before this, and like I feel like I'm getting a lot better at being like, okay, so we're looking at the calendar. And there's these 4 days in between these two things that we're doing. And instead of being like, yeah, sure, we'll go, play that show or take that meeting or whatever, to just be like, actually, like, we really want that time off. That's the first thing that is really, really hard, because opportunities are fun, and like in isolation, like I want to do all of it, but then like obviously all connected, then you end up doing everything all the time and it's too much. So that's the first thing, is learning to say no, which I'm, slowly getting better at. And I think Tuck and I are slowly getting better at. But there's like, I try to eat really healthily. It's really important to me to like eat a lot of vegetables and make sure that I'm getting enough protein and drinking enough water and not getting too dehydrated. And then, I do a gratitude walk every morning, which I definitely made Justina do with me at least once. I don't know if Logan, I've dragged you
They're
with.
the best.
They're the best. So, there's like so much research that's coming out about gratitude, which like seems so cliche and like so simple, but if you really think about it, it's just mathematically accurate that like if you focus on gratitude, like you will increase your fulfillment, period, because there are always things to be grateful for. And I think, shifting your perspective and figuring out how to reframe your mental like state around what it is that is happening to you and the story that you're telling yourself is extremely powerful. So I'm far from perfect at this. There are for sure days where I'm like, woe is me, but then as soon as I go on this gratitude walk, I'm like, wait, woe is me, but also the sun is shining and it feels so good to feel it on my skin, and like, oh my God, I'm like living my dream life, and I get to make music, and I get to be with people that I love, and like, I work with people that I love. And so the gratitude walk is a big one. I actually learned it from a Tony Robbins podcast. He he like out I was listening to it during the pandemic, and ever since then I've just done it, basically every day. And you just walk for 5 minutes, you're like breathing consciously for 5 minutes, you're verbally expressing gratitude. So then when I'm with somebody, then we'll go like back and forth. So I'll be like, I'm grateful for blah, blah, blah. And then they'll be like, I'm grateful for blah, blah, blah. And like often we're in a group. So there'll be like 6 people and we're just like going back and forth about what we're grateful for. And then after that, it's like an intention setting exercise, which is similar. It's just stream of consciousness about what it is that your intention is for, whatever period of time. So that day, that week, that month, whatever. And I really, really believe in it, because I immediately feel the effects of verbally, consciously expressing gratitude and kind of understanding what it is that my intention is, so that the rest of the day and the rest of the week, I can actually be going back to like my bigger why. And then I journal every night obsessively. Like I just I'm that's I think that's why I'm an artist. I'm a processor. And so just getting things out, being like, this is the story that I'm telling myself right now. And then this is the story that I wish I was telling myself right now. And same thing goes for calling friends, is an enormous one. I became like very, very intentional and conscious last year. Actually, after I went through a breakup, I was like, wait a minute. Okay. These are the people that I'm going to decide are going to be my 5 people. And I'm going to invest a lot of my time in them, and I'm going to lean on them, and I'm going to let them see all of me. And if I need something, like, I know I can call them. And it's been a lifesaver, especially as a single person living on the road, because it can be hard not to have a partner, for just like feeling isolated. Um, and really good communication with Tucker is a huge one. As much as possible, also really good communication with our management team. Whenever like we feel like we haven't talked enough, like then that's when we'll like hit roadblocks, and we're like, wait, what's happening? We just haven't talked enough. Like we just need to actually understand what's happening in each other's lives, like interpersonally and professionally, and like get on the same page. Yeah, as you can see, I could literally go on forever. I exercise every day. I do basically like stand up Pilates. It's called 3-form. And it's just like very, very low impact working out. I can't really do high intensity training anymore because everything is too high intensity in my life. So doing exercise that kind of like brings me down and is calming for my nervous system, even though I'm strengthening my muscles, is really helpful. Um, and I roll out every day. I do, foam rolling with I have so many apparatuses that I foam roll with. I meditate. Uh, Tuck and I sometimes meditate together now, which is really nice. We both do therapy, and sometimes we join each other's therapy too, which has been really nice. Like our therapist now, like know the other person. God, yeah, that's just the fucking tip of the iceberg.
I second the therapy though. That's probably been one of the most helpful things for my career, is just having someone objective to co-process with, and to know that they're always a phone call away, especially when you're traveling, if you need to talk to someone.
Yeah, I think a thing I've really learned working with this team too is the importance of sort of, especially on the road, having like a day-to-day schedule that maintains pretty constant. So like whether or not they're doing press at like a certain time before their sets, or like waking up at the same time, or like when they're on their headline tours, just making sure their schedules pretty much stay aligned every single day, so they have that sense of routine that you normally would get just like working a 9 to 5 or something like that, instead of just having like all this bouncing around and jumbled up different times that you're trying to organize your life around.
It's still nearly impossible, because then it's like, oh, by the way, tonight you're DJing from 3 to 5 a.m. And then like tomorrow you're going to be in a totally different time zone. And it's like, but we've decided things like, okay, well, we don't really start press until after noon, so that at least like we can have our morning. Like Tucker likes to do he likes to go to breakfast and like have his acai bowl and his coffee in the morning and like go somewhere. And that's his sort of thing. Like I like to do my walk and do my meditation and exercise and like that. So like if we can have those, then it makes the rest of the workday, even if it's totally sporadic and confusing, like a lot more manageable.
And also, I think it's been so helpful once we started to be vocal with one another about what the artists on the road need, to create that stability and that structure, even when there's so many factors outside of our control related to travel and performing at strange hours, and sleeping in weird places on a bus. And it's just having a better understanding, so that we can approach the work in the way that's least disruptive.
And Justina, I think it's amazing. So I have to say, some of the points that you've all made here, it really feels like a handbook on how to take care of yourself, how to be fulfilled, how to create a supportive and engaging community team, in so many ways. And I think, Sophie, going back to something that you said early on, at MusiCares, one of the things that we focus on a lot is this idea of objective and subjective mental health. And so are, of course, for all of us, there are objective issues in our life that are going to be stressors, but so much of this does come down to subjectivity, the perspective, the way we choose to frame our day. And so I think what's just so incredible is the intentionality that you all have put around this. It really comes across. And one of the things that we seem to be noticing more at MusiCares is a sense that there is a paradigm shift in the music industry, that there are more artists, that there are more teams who are really saying, we're gonna change the script on this. We're gonna do things differently. We're gonna take care of ourselves and take care of each other. Do you see that happening? Does it still feel like it's nascent, or are we kind of further along in this paradigm shift?
It's a great question. From my perspective, I think I live in a little bit of a bubble in terms of like the people that I'm friends with and connect with, like tend to be more interested, I guess, in their own personal growth and fulfillment. But I feel like I continue to have rude awakenings of being like, wait. Actually, like most of the people that I know are like on this cycle of like taking a lot of Ambien and Adderall to exist. You know what I mean? Like actually we're a little further than I thought. Like, and people are maybe more in private really deeply struggling because it's a really hard lifestyle. And like when you were talking about subjectivity and reframing, it is nearly impossible to reframe and subjectively experience your reality as positive when you haven't slept. Like, it is it's really hard work as it is. I mean, everyone can attest to that. Like, it takes so much intention, it takes so much hard work, and it takes so much reminding. I was talking to a friend last night, and I was like, I need constant reminding from my friends. And I need friends who will tell me, like, interesting that you're saying that you're complaining right now. Like, let me challenge you and just be like, how else could you look at that? And so I like having friends who say shit like that to me. Um, but when I haven't slept, and or if, there's like a drug come down, like, it is almost impossible to do that. So I feel like it's still actually quite nascent. I have a lot of people who know that I'm sort of like about this and care about this and I'm passionate about it, who talk to me about it. And I definitely think there are more people that are interested, and also more people who are watching these documentaries over and over again, being like, this is just silly that we're repeating the same errors. And obviously, like, as a world at large, I think there are more people who are interested in, there's less stigma around mental health, and there's a lot more access. So it's happening. I think it's still nascent. Um, and I think there's a lot more work to be done and consciousness to be brought to this. Actually, one other interesting thing I was just thinking about is, if someone was telling me this the other day, so I can't necessarily like cross check this, but a reframe I really like is, I think it was in the NBA, correct me if I'm wrong, that they're shifting the conversation. Instead of it being like mental health coaches, it's actually mind health, which I prefer, because mental health has a lot of stigma and negative connotations. Mind health, however, feels very positive and very sort of like athletic. And I like that a lot more.
Yeah, it also just, to add to all of the great points Sophie brought up, I think that change only exists through the lens of time. And so it's really hard to identify exactly where we are at right in this moment. And we probably won't know until we're looking at it through the lens of, like, what's happening for artists in an industry as a whole over the course of like a decade. But I think one thing that I feel on a day-to-day basis is just this scarcity mindset that I think sort of permeates this industry, that is really detrimental to, our mind health and our physical health, but also our ability to sort of stay present in the moments and enjoy the wins. And so that's just like one thing I try and stay very focused on, and try to encourage others around me to do as well, is to like really, really stop, take that breath, and appreciate the moment at hand. Because, I think that, it's really easy to just start worrying about, what's going to happen tomorrow, or, um, creating that stability, but it really starts with those individual moments.
I also agree. I think another thing that, maybe we can't really see it in as fast moving like motion right now, but just also in the fact that so many people are feeling a lot more open to tell their stories via their platforms, whether that be women who are struggling, non-binary people, people of color, LGBTQ plus. They're actually coming out and they're making music about that, and they're also talking about their struggles and connecting to this whole community that previously, like even in just the past 10, 15 years, didn't have a voice and felt like they couldn't be connected in that sort of realm. And of course, all those people are still continually having struggles and battles that they're facing. But I think in some ways we can appreciate the fact that in this mind health game, that now there are voices for these people and they feel like they can at least express that openly.
It's also been amazing to see artists say, hey, I'm canceling my tour because of my mental health. And we've gotten to see that in the past. I mean, honestly, I feel like it's kind of since the pandemic that people have been saying stuff like that. And, it's a handful of like really large artists who have gone out and said that. And I think that's really powerful, for other artists to see, that that's like totally acceptable. and that, fans will understand and ultimately see the artist as human.
I think it's so important, Sophie. And I think we've really seen, especially Justina, to your point, this sentiment, it is an industry of scarcity. And so how do you say no? How do you pass up a gig? How do you pass up one more opportunity? And I think to the point that you guys were making earlier, you really make this effort to block your time, to block your schedules, to find that way to take care of yourself. And Logan, I'm so interested in something that you mentioned, because I think one of the things that I feel really comes across in your music is this sense of fulfillment. And it comes across with the artistry and the beautiful and the connection to nature. There are so many different elements. And I would imagine whether you're in Brazil and you're singing in Portuguese, or you're in English in another country, do you feel like this sense of fulfillment helps to connect you with fans in a different way?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I kind of feel like, music is energy. Um, and the the quality and authenticity with which I am actually happy and fulfilled, both in recording the music, in performing the music, and sharing the music, w- inevitably has to come across, in my opinion. And, you know, I think, I hope that the more that we grow and become fulfilled in our own way, that, I have these moments sometimes where this is like very very yoga of me, but um I'll kind of look out into the crowd and I'll be like, I told my parents this the other day. I was at Coachella weekend too, and I was like, what do I want to give the crowd right now? And I was like, I want to give them the same feeling that I had growing up with these two parents who loved me unconditionally. And like, I just want them to feel what it's like to have been loved like that. So I kind of like tried to focus on that. And then I don't know if you've ever done a loving kindness meditation, but you kind of like, you look at people and you just wish them well, basically. So I did that, and I looked at people, and I wished them well. And I was like, I really hope you guys can feel this, And I personally just believe in that. Like, I just believe in the exchange of energy and um nonverbal sort of intention communicating. And uh the quality of like my own mental, emotional, spiritual space, I think, has an enormous impact on the quality of what I'm able to offer others, for sure.
I love that. Well, thank you guys. Let me ask just before we close, is there anything else you would love other music professionals to know about how you do this? What's important to you guys as a team? Anything else that we could share?
I think I would just recommend to start with self exploration and knowing yourself and knowing what your body needs, what your mind needs, so that you get to a place where you're comfortable vocalizing that and sharing, both what boundaries maybe are or what support looks like for you, because I think it's different for everyone. And, just to not expect people to be mind readers. But I think there are so many people out there that, want to support, that are on the team. And so, yeah, I think it just starts with getting more acquainted with your own, where you are at in the journey, and what you might need externally.
Yeah, and I'd say just sort of being able to take a step back and think about what's inspiring you in like the current moment, and how and in which ways that can be applied to both your life and what you're doing in work in the everyday.
Yeah, I'd also say, you know, uh, you can start wherever you are at. Like, it doesn't matter if you can be sober or deep in an addiction, or anywhere along the sort of spectrum of like how well you feel, or how fulfilled you feel. And there's always like the next best right step. like there's always sort of like a small improvement that you can make exactly where you are right now. And you don't have to sort of like jump to the extremity with which I tour, like that's unnecessary. I'm also like, I am myself, which is like this deeply sensitive person who like feels like they need all of these things. But like not everyone will need to, do a gratitude walk in the morning in order to feel fulfilled. Like they can start wherever they are. And like for Tucker, his taking care of himself looks very different from mine, and it works for him. And what works for everybody is going to have to inevitably be really different. And yeah, just start small, start where you are. And I think it's just really cool that we're as an industry kind of shifting.
I love that. Start small, start where you are. I think that's great words for us to live by. So thank you again, Logan, Justina, Sophie. We really, really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. And it's been really inspiring, and we learned a lot. So thank you guys.